2 months ago, I released my first ever blind review for the Genshin Impact story quest, where I analyzed and gave my thoughts on the first Archon quest of Natlan, and since then I've released 3 other videos dissecting Natlan's story, and now it's time to come to its conclusion. I plan to give my thoughts on the aspects of this story that I both enjoyed and hated in this tragic, thrilling, and most of all, troubled nation. I was vehemently excited about where this story was going to go, and now it's time to check out if Genshin was able to deliver. This is my review for Natlan's bombastic final. The story immediately kicks off with the dream sequence of the captain, before we immediately wake up. I know I'm speeding through this section like really quickly, but I have my own thoughts on the Capitano sections that will be tackled at the end of the video. Anywho's, after some talking, we head off to a send-off party with Mavwika in tow. Now, the party scene. I have quite a number of problems here. First of all, starting with Mavwika. As I stated before in my 5.3 prediction video and my 5.1 blind review, I found Mavwika to be really bland as a character. Like a blank canvas with really no distinct personality to make me even slightly interested in the character. And this quest, oh god, this quest does not help with that. Mavwika is just a plain great leader, selfless hero archetype. There are so many scenes here in this quest alone that just grinds that point to the ground. Another weird problem I found is Chaska's oddly inconsistent mindset. Like, in the character quest, she seems fine. In fact, she seems far more accepting and just like her normal self. But here, it's like she's still grief-stricken over Chuyu's death and is oddly somber. Why wasn't that a part of the story quest? Well, why is she so different here? And third, with Oraron, please just be quiet, all of you. Like, Oraron's message I felt was really goddamn good because it doesn't shout its message to its player's face like it's a Darman video. It leaves us to decide what the messaging is with hints and dialogues from the characters themselves. But here, Mavwika just says what Oraron learned in the 5.1 quest. It's like they were worried that some people wouldn't get it and just explained it to the audience. It doesn't work and just acts to be less narratively in-depth. Like, literally, he ends off the exchange saying, "That's what I've always tried to do." I just think this interaction serves to make Oraron's themes less complex or deep. However, even with these complaints, I do like what the scene serves for the story. It's a simple service and just acts to show us what we're fighting for. The sake of all the friends we have accumulated over the trials and tribulations of this journey in Natlan. Genuinely, this makes me want to at least see the Abyss defeated and liberate all of Natlan. Another thing I really enjoyed in this section is Seatlali's characterization. People say I'm crazy for not supporting the Aetheric Seatlali ship, but honestly here she just seems like a worried friend and nothing more, not overly flustered, and her banter with us is enjoyable, comedic, but also spews inner depth.
Hey sis, it's been a long time. This form is probably what I look like in your memories, right?
I don't like this scene. In fact, I think I hate it. Not because it doesn't align with what I predicted in my 5.3 prediction video, which you should totally watch. Shameless plug 3 times already. But anyways, it was because it just reassured something to me. Mavwika was in fact the bland, uninspiring character I thought she was from the very beginning. This scene could have been great. It could have been used to explore Mavwika's own personal conflicts, her inner thoughts and wishes about her family, and how she's just suffering as much as everyone else. But it doesn't. Instead of this being a confrontation, it's just a brief moment of pause. It explores nothing that the previous 3 have explored and doesn't tie to the downfall of the Pyro Archon and rebirth of Mavwika. I have more thoughts about Mavwika, but I'll just save that for next week's video. I also kind of like the idea of Traveler being met with all the previous traveler companions. In theory, everyone that the Traveler helped in Natlan coming together and face the Abyss even in death where other Natlan warriors couldn't. It's a great idea, but the thing is, Traveler, for the most part, was more or less in the sidelines for most of these characters. See, Lali gave Vichama the chance to see his friend one last time before he died brutally. Zelonin was more or less on the case of the child that Zip's memory story or whatever that was. Ateo was far more influential to Mulani rather than the Traveler. My problem really is the protagonist isn't great. He doesn't feel active, and considering he doesn't really have anything to relate to as a personality, he becomes a really goddamn bland character in this story. The whitest of white bread. I like Trailblazer and Honkai Star Rail because they have a goofy personality with clackbacks and responses, along with more choosable dialogue making them feel like their own character. That is something Aether or Lumine very much lacks, thus making them boring and uninteresting. And this makes it so that I vehemently don't care that much about the final battle, as both characters that are the central point and focus of the battle is extremely uninteresting and bland, which was really underwhelming. Along with that, I have another issue centered around the main obstacle of this section, and keep in mind this isn't really a problem with just Natlan, but an overarching mishap that plagues all of Genshin Impact's story, in my opinion. The final boss is really just that, a final, bland, and uninspiring boss. Wow, I've used that word bland a lot. I think it fails to be a good obstacle for the heroes to overcome, and I just don't think he adds much to the story of Natlan or its previously expressed themes. Throughout the entire story and the entire battle, the creature just says the most generic villain dialogue ever, and I think it was just written by the same person who wrote Jiren in Dragon Ball Super and just said that was good enough. This singular scene is undoubtedly, without question, my favorite scene in Natlan 5.3 story quest. No, it's my favorite scene in the entire Natlan Archon quests. More than Chuyu's death, or Araron's declaration, Mulani's talk with Ateo, or even Lali's drunken stew. And it's such a simple scene. The sacred flame extinguishes and the entire crowd bursts into confused and worried murmurs. Even the overly cheerful and positive Mulani is shrouded in worry and fear, when suddenly a single voice cuts through the air, a reaction that almost seems like instinct. Kachina. When we first met Kachina in the 5.0 story quest, she was soft-spoken. She could never raise her voice at anyone and just let others talk down to her, because she was plagued by her self-doubt, something that made her feel unworthy, which made her feel like she wasn't deserving of an ancient name. And 5.0 acted to break down those walls of self-confidence and reveal to Kachina that she was in fact a warrior everyone can be proud of, including herself. So for this chant to be started by Kachina is a wonderful and perfectly encapsulates her arc that started off in 5.1 with a glorious bow. Kachina, her journey from a timid character that is plagued with self-doubt and growing to someone who can stand up and speak for her friends even when fear is overtaking her own body, is a powerful and resonant payoff for the messages Natlan wishes to tell with Kachina, a beginning and a middle and an end with a proper payoff. While this scene was heartfelt and honestly pretty heartwarming, it made me realize something, that just like the war section in the 5.1 quest that I vehemently don't really resonate with, I don't think I ever once thought we were at trouble. While I love Kachina's start of the chant, I think its impact is lessened because of that lingering feeling that everything will be just okay. I knew Mavuika wasn't gonna die because she got released that day and she had a story quest lined up, and that's not something a dead character gets, so tension was never really high.
선택해라. 네가 만든 규칙을 부정할지 아니면 나로 인한 모순을 만들지.
불사의 저주는 계속되어야 해. 그걸로 너의 마지막 영혼을 이루도록.
I was extremely surprised at this decision to kill off probably the most popular character in all of Natlan, that people have been honestly just waiting years to even get a single moment of screen time with. That was such a big step forward, and unlike Chuyu, it actually felt like it had a meaning to its death, that it had a message to say other than just blatantly moving the plot forward. However, much like most of Natlan, I find an issue with this decision. It's build-up. While I like the scene that builds up mystery with the captain's plan, I don't like how quickly this death was built up. This is a decision that should have probably spent a whole update, or even more, before the death happens to get to know Captain's plan, or put breadcrumbs, or know the captain's character, but because we are distracted by this thing, we don't get that build-up. And for sure, it just distracts me that something of this stature was quite rushed to get that mind-blowing finale. I'm not saying that this is a bad ending either, hell no. For an ending of Capitano's story, I do feel like it was near perfect for the character, but again, I don't feel as if it was built up properly with enough time to treat the finish with the care it deserves. If I thought that the scene had much more building up to it, I would absolutely have no problem with the scene, and because of that, I understand the scene itself isn't the issue. It's the timing, and honestly, that's just a lot of Natlan. The timing is off. I know that reading through this video, as it is in its scripting phase, I come off as negative, but I really am trying not to. I like the world built by Genshin and I love its characters, and when they hit, but overall, I don't think Natlan was a good continuation of the precedent that Fontaine left behind. Its Archon was far more shallow, its group of characters were really underdeveloped, and once again the villain was just some big bad monster that didn't really seem to echo the themes of the arc. Even though I love villains like Frieza and Cell, who are pure evil from birth, which goes to show that my problem is that they were pure evil, it's just that they didn't do anything but be an obstacle. The final big monster from the Archon quest isn't as charismatic or echoes the themes for the characters. Much like Jiren from Dragon Ball Super, it's just a punching bag for the characters to beat up, only a physical obstacle, and all good and great series uses their villains as both a physical and mental obstacle. Along with that, I didn't love Mavwika and just how bland and trope-like she was. She wasn't her own character with a really great personality like Farina and Nahida was. It was just a dull, perfect warrior that didn't interest me in any way. However, I did like the party scene, and it's set up to show what exactly we're fighting for, along with the leyline scene and of course the bantering and relationship with other characters. That is really interesting, and I do feel like Natlan, or Genshin Impact as its whole, is at its peak when it writes dialogue and dynamics for other characters, and of course, Kachina. I loved her in this section. I've liked her since the beginning of 5.1 because her narrative path was very interesting to me, and well, I found it to be an extremely big problem that she was all but sidelined in 5.1 in favor for Citlali and Oraron. And honestly, this ending was amazing for her. The arc to culminate her character was near perfect, and honestly, I didn't even think of that when making the 5.3 prediction video. And really, I think she's the character that carried Natlan for me, and honestly made me enjoy Natlan more than Fontaine in terms of its overall story. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Fontaine's story is kind of bad from what I remember, and I very much love Kachina Boraron, Lolly. All three of that, yeah, compared to Farina and Navia, which are just the standouts, I do think Natlan has done more in terms of, well, I'd say games and characters, but overall, Fontaine's finale was far greater, and its characters' peaks were much more boisterous, and of course, the ending was great, but its lead-up was far from perfect. Whew, alright, while I finished my thoughts here on the 5.3 story quest, whatever, Archon, I will post my final video on Natlan next week, where I go over and list everything I loved and hated with this story, giving my final thoughts on Natlan as a whole before concluding this series. I have to wonder though, just what did you like about 5.3 and Natlan as a whole? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, Jesus Christ. My name is FFG Mania, and thank you so very much for watching.